My name's Stephen, and along with Lynn, we're responsible for some of the education materials that we produce to help people understand a bit more about MND. Normally we work with healthcare professionals, people with MND, their families, but this would be something else. This would be the kind of general public, or in your case, hospitality, tourism, everything that we want to try and get across for this event, which is coming up in little over a month at this point, so it's getting closer. What I'm planning on doing is for around maybe 30 minutes plus or minus, leave some space for questions, is just make sure you're aware of the kind of key dates when this event's taking place. It's taking place here in the SE Centre. Some little bit of information about us as an organisation, but not too much because our website's quite comprehensive and you can go on that whenever you like. There's no point in me telling you everything today here, not a good use of time. What I really want to do is talk about the information that we believe is most relevant for you guys that you can use, practical tips, things that might actually come up, so that you're better prepared to interact and engage with people with MND. As well as that, as mentioned, there's a little flyer that's outside, and most of what I'm going to say will be based on that, so please do take that away. I think there's more than we need, so if you want to share them with other people, then please do that, that would be great. And like I mentioned, there'll be time for questions, maybe a whole 5 to 10 minutes ideally. The event itself, there's actually a sort of series of events. It basically takes place over the entire week, so you're talking roughly between 8 in the morning till 8 PM. There's going to be a lot of activity, different events that are all in the name of this big kind of symposium that's on over the weekend. So on the 4th and the 5th we've got an Alliance event, which is in the Crown Plaza, with an Ask the Expert event on the 5th, which is ultimately a sort of a Q&A with kind of experts, researchers to do with MND, and that's the day that we forecast there'll be the most people with MND. That's open to the public, and that's where it's really meant to be a kind of back and forth between the researchers and the general public. So that is the key date where we expect the majority of people with MND will actually be coming and going in and around where we are just now. There's the Allied Professionals Forum, which is for healthcare professionals. On the 6th, we expect there'll be some people there as well. And then the kind of big thrust of the event, the big massive, maybe 1,600 people, I think, maybe more, will be at the SE Centre between the 7th and the 9th. So we don't actually know who's coming and going and when. We can't know that just now, but we do believe that the 5th may be the key date where you'll maybe meet the most people with MND. MND Scotland. Well, we are a charity. We're based in Glasgow. We're up behind Cowcaddens, and we've got a lovely view of the exhibition centre, which we can see every day from our office. Our vision is a world without motor neuron disease, something that we're trying to accomplish in a variety of different ways, including research. The big event coming up next month is effectively a research conference, so we're really keen to see what's going on in the kind of global picture. Our mission is to find a cure. Currently there is no cure. There's nothing that even comes close, to deliver and to transform care. Our principles are that people affected by MND are at the heart of all that we do. We strive for those affected by MND to have equal access to services, and we are building a movement to defeat MND, principally based on investing in research. In terms of the second point there about equal access, there's another organisation down south called MNDA, Motor Neuron Disease Association, and they are basically organising the event. So we work quite closely with them and try and make sure that anyone with MND in UK effectively has the same experience, the same opportunities, the same care. The reason that we exist, as we'll get to shortly, is that MND, motor neuron disease, otherwise known as ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, a myriad of complicated synonyms. It's quite irritating, but basically MND is what we'll call it today. It affects speech, mobility, eating, drinking, speaking, breathing, a whole bunch of things that we do voluntarily or involuntarily every day. We don't think about it, but the way that MND affects the brain and the rest of the body, it impacts on the ability to do those things, really basic things. So for example, with speech, and this is an actual quote from someone with MND from our myth-busting campaign this year, "My mum's motor neuron disease started with her speech becoming slurred. At work she was called into HR, they assumed that she was drunk." We've heard that before, that's fairly commonplace. So people perhaps in Glasgow, perhaps it's Christmas, taxis going, coming, things like that, it might be forgivable to assume that someone was actually drunk by slurring their speech. In this instance, it's highly likely that they've actually got MND. In terms of mobility, people look at me in my wheelchair, they cross the street, I have motor neuron disease, but I'm still me. So these are two of the kind of key things I'll come back to later about talking and walking, and it's because of these things that we have various services that we provide that otherwise wouldn't exist. So if you lived in Scotland and you have MND, really you're not going to be able to get away from us because we provide all these different things here. Things I'd love to talk about, but I'll just briefly whiz through. Everything's on our website. Things like equipment loan, such as a big massive rise in recliner chairs, people need to stay upright, could be wheelchairs, communication aids, things like iPads and tablets to help people speak, complementary therapies, counselling, support groups, things you might imagine for a charity. And importantly, recently a lot of these have become available to the whole family, to people with MND and their partners, their spouses, etc. So we're expanding as a sort of service charity, but we're also trying to invest in research as well, because we would like to see a cure. MND Awareness Week is what I would recommend you have a wee look at if you do go on our website. Some things I'd love to talk about again, but don't have too much time. You might recognise Doddy Weir, for example. That's Ricky Ross from Deacon Blue. Lots of celebs are getting involved who know people with MND and coming together for big events to help us with awareness raising and fundraising and things that really help us to enhance our profile. And one of the best ways that we've managed to do that is with a partnership with ScotRail. So you might or might not notice, I certainly didn't notice until I started working for MND Scotland, but there's a collection tin in every single train station in Scotland, which is a staggering achievement for an organisation of about 25 people. We can't possibly get more exposure than that, so keep an eye out for that. They're everywhere. There's also a train that's a little, the clock in Central Station that they lit up for Awareness Day. The chap there, I can't remember his name, I think it was Neil, he dressed up in tartan and made about £100 just go to work. He was wearing a kilt that day doing his route, made a lot of money, and it's just great that we've got that kind of brand recognition now. So our awareness rating is actually quite high, and it's a pleasant coincidence that it's the same colour scheme and things like that. So keep an eye out for that. MND in Scotland. So we're going to focus on Scotland. This is the picture that we kind of work with. There's a lot of different things going on in different countries, but we are MND Scotland. We focus on MND in Scotland. And there's around 450 people currently living with MND. That figure will fluctuate ever so slightly, with about 200 people diagnosed each year. And the way that that number actually makes sense is that people die. People die pretty quickly within 20 months. It can be a couple of days. It can take forever to get diagnosed. There's no test. It's really complicated, and when you get diagnosed, there's a very, very rapid decline. So the sort of turnover, if you like, is quite quick. People are diagnosed, people die, and on it goes. However, it does seem that in Scotland it is on the rise, and that's something that we're particularly mindful of, and we're trying to find out why that might be. MND is a neurological disorder, so it's a disease of the brain, and the brain is by far the most complicated organ in the body. We have the least developed materials that understand it, so the reason we don't have a cure is because it's a very, very challenging thing to try and understand. But nonetheless, there's a lot of new technologies that are developing, a lot of new microscopes, etc. But ultimately, it's the brain we're talking about, so we know very little about it. Typically begins in adulthood, but you will see a lot of people who are much younger than that. But in general terms, 40, 45, 50 years old, progressive and irreversible. There's no cure, there's no way of getting rid of it. It will kill you. That's what's going to happen. And I don't know if you can see it terribly well, but there's a little graphic there from MNDA, who I mentioned down south, where the lifetime risk is about 1 in 300, which, in my mind anyway, isn't particularly rare. And if you zoom that out to the kind of global picture, that's about 14, 15, 16 million people. So the average cinema screen, if you're at the cinema at Friday, someone there's probably got MND in terms of the numbers. So it's rare, but it's not that rare, and we think it's on the rise. Some familiar faces perhaps. I didn't know, for example, Ronnie Corbett had MND. You've got Stephen Hawking, who died just this year, who was the kind of big famous face, if you like. Charlie Mingus on the top right, who's a jazz musician, American. David Niven, quite a lot of Scottish people here actually. Jimmy Johnson on the right, Doddy Weir on the left. So a lot of sporting kind of people. There's a lot of celebrities in the sporting world, and certainly there seems to be something going on there. There's a presentation I'm particularly keen to see in December, where a lot of people have been speculating about the link between basically big strong men. I would have thought being a big strong man was always a good thing, but it seems that there might be an elevated risk there for MND for one reason or another. So age and gender I've put there. Gender, roughly 3 to 2. You're going to get more men than women with MND. Roughly 3 men for every 2 women. And I put a wee picture of Fernando Rickson here, Rangers football player who is still alive and still has MND. And if you've seen him up and running, you'll know the deterioration's quite significant. Generally, in terms of causes, we don't know. I'm not going to spend any more time on that. It's very sporadic, very random, can happen to anyone at any time. Perhaps if you're a man and you're a bit older, that might be an elevated risk, but ultimately it's very mysterious. And lifestyle and occupation, again, we don't know too much about this, but it seems that there might be some links between traditional masculine or male-dominated industries, such as military, working with pesticides, things like that. MND is an umbrella term. I mentioned it's also known in America as ALS, which is really a subcategory of MND, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, who is of course a baseball star, so again, big, sporty, athletic, healthy men. MND affects different people in different ways, and we're going to speak about some of the most common things today, to keep it kind of clear, because it is quite a challenging disorder. It can really vary quite a lot, with quite a rapid deterioration. What works one day might be vastly different the next time you see someone, so it's very tricky to put together a real kind of comprehensive overview, but we'll talk about the most common things. Most people die of respiratory failure. So MND will kill you, but typically what it is that, as we'll get to, it stops you being able to breathe. So most people die of not being able to breathe any longer. The way that I kind of got my head around MND when I was just kind of getting started, and I've only been with the organisation for about 6 months, but I just thought of bridges. That was my way of thinking about it. If you imagine these connections in the brain, from the brain down to your arm, the kind of connections that would tell you to move, to speak, all these connections, they don't work anymore with MND. So if you imagine somewhere like New York City with all these bridges and tunnels and connections, all this activity, all this coming and going, if the bridges stop working, then that all stops happening. And that's what happens. There's a complete cut-off between the signals coming from the brain, meaning that you can't control movement, you can't walk, you can't talk, and it's impossible to fix, to reverse it. So that's my little way of thinking about it, is to think of bridges. There's a really good video that I'd love to play, but it lasts a whole 5 minutes, so what I'll do is I'll skip over this, but if you wanted to see a little bit more about the causes and what we actually know, the kind of bigger picture, then there's a really good talk online called Why Is It So Hard to Cure ALS? You'll find that on the web. If you want me to send these slides later or something, then we can do that as well, that's fine. So with that little introduction, the real kind of thrust of what I want to talk about today is some of the key information that we think is most relevant. We have budgeted quite a lot of time afterwards for questions, because we can't know what is most relevant for you. We've done the best we can. Clinicians have helped out, people with MND and their carers have been to some support groups. The one in Glasgow, for example, is in Ibrox. MND Scotland staff have done the best we can to put together this new resource, and the material that's outside is brand new, developed just for this event. So this is the real thrust of what we'd like to talk about. But as mentioned, we do have a lot of fact sheets and all sorts of things online, and you can get in touch with us anytime between now and the event. So this is the main thing to cover, but there is more online. So most of what I'm going to say is on the handout that you'll get when you leave, so please do take that away. Please circulate it to anyone else that you think might be interested. It doesn't need to be someone else, say taxi drivers, friends, family, anyone. The more people that we can help to understand what MND actually involves, what it's really like, that would be a huge win for us for awareness reason. Okay, excuse me. Talking. Some people with MND, and I emphasise some, may have difficulty speaking. Their speech may be slurred, or they may not be able to talk at all. They might use equipment to help them communicate, such as a computer, an iPad, or pen and paper. Some people with MND will use a breathing mask, which means their speech could be muffled, slow, difficult to understand. Just because they have difficulty speaking, it doesn't mean that they can't hear you and that they don't understand you. It's really important that most people with MND, even though they might have some kind of deficits in planning, etc., they're very aware of what's going on. They know if they're having problems speaking, they know that. Everything else works fine, they can hear you, all these things are totally fine, they know that. So they're quite happy to accommodate taking a bit longer, because they know that this is not how people normally speak. So with that in mind, try and maintain eye contact so you can really see and hear what's going on. Oftentimes if I meet someone that's in a wheelchair, I'll quite happily get down on one knee so I can really look at them, but I have really bad tinnitus and I can't hear anything unless you're looking right at me, basically. So eye contact works really well in general terms, and that would be the case with anyone, of course. Allow some extra time. This of course applies to anyone really, but to just budget that little bit extra time just to make sure that you're really listening and that person feels understood, that they feel that they've really been heard, and that you do whatever it is they're asking you to do. Don't make decisions on their behalf. Don't, I've said that one, sorry. Don't ignore them, and if you want them to repeat themselves, then that's totally fine. The kind of key message, if there is one today, is to just make sure that you've understood what someone's asking from you, so that when you do something, that's what they were wanting. Don't make any assumptions and don't think that you're helping someone when actually you're not. Speak directly to the person with MND, not who they are travelling with, unless it is clear that that's actually what they want. And I will make some emphasis here because it's very unlikely that you're going to meet anyone with MND who's on their own. Doesn't really matter if they have problem talking, walking, various things, coming to another country, and again this is an international delegation, people coming from all over the world, they're probably going to be with someone else, and if you can't understand what someone's saying, the person next to them will, because that will be their husband, their wife, they'll be with them every day, all day long, they will be able to understand them a lot better than someone meeting them for the first time. Walking. MND can affect some people's ability to walk unaided. Some may use a walking stick or something similar for extra support. This could mean that they'll move slower and there's a greater risk of falling. Some people, some might use a wheelchair, and wheelchairs can actually be quite big, so you're talking your average wheelchair, but by the time you maybe add on some sort of adaptation like an iPad or something to help them communicate, they can actually be quite large, so you're talking perhaps bigger than your average wheelchair, if they have a wheelchair. So in a similar vein to talking and communication, just budget some extra time, let people get where they're going, but it might take them that little bit longer. That's if they've got a walking stick, that's if they've got a wheelchair, that's if they have none of these things, but they just want a little bit extra time. If there's elevators rather than stairs, absolutely, and accessible toilets. This is something that comes up a lot for us with people, especially with wheelchairs. They talk a lot about where they've been on holiday, things they've done, and accessible toilets aren't always terribly accessible. They might be able to get in, but then they might not be able to get back out again, or to wash their hands, things like that. So if there are big, accessible toilets wherever they're going, then that's the place that you can direct them to. Similarly, accessible rooms when it comes to hotels, etc., that would be the way to go there. Wheelchair users will require additional space when dining. When offering to open doors for people, check if they already have their hands on the door handle. This is something that would never have occurred to me until I went to a support group. If someone's got their hand on the door handle, you might think you're kind of doing them a bit of a favour, but that might be the one thing that's actually keeping them propped up. So by opening the door, they could fall. So that's perhaps the worst case scenario, but that's just something to bear in mind. It's perhaps something that might happen that you wouldn't have thought about, and certainly I had no idea until I started working here that was a real possibility, and it has happened. It's not a fanciful scenario. So these are some of the things to bear in mind in terms of walking and getting around. In terms of getting around, poor dexterity might mean that people might not be able to handle money. So that might or might not be an issue depending on how people pay, but it's possible that you could hand someone some change and it might just go right through their fingers. So the ability to really compress and to hold a pen, to be able to button up their shirt, things like that, they can be massively impeded, so there's no grip strength whatsoever. I've put the croissant here. If someone can help me out, you might understand what I mean, but I found out recently someone was trying to get to the armadillo and they were talking about the croissant. They didn't know what it was called, so they called it the croissant, which was a perfectly satisfactory way of getting where they were going because the taxi drivers understood what they meant. That's the kind of thing that might happen because, again, it's an international delegation. So if you're talking about someone from another country who perhaps has speech difficulties as well, communication could be quite a burden. So people might not know where they're going, they might use different words for things, they might not know Glasgow intimately, they might say various things that aren't terribly useful to you. Getting in and out of taxis and trains is something that I guess we've kind of spoke about. And a paper and pen is something that came straight from our head clinical nurse specialist in Scotland. Is something that you can absolutely do. Don't think that that's a no-no. If you've got a pen and paper, if you don't know what someone said, get them to write it down. You won't be the first person who's asked them to do that. And although it might seem a little bit childlike, it's the difference of actually making sure that person is understood, which is the key thing. Make sure that person has been understood so that they feel that you've engaged with them, treated them with respect. So paper and pen, completely satisfactory way of making sure that person's communicated what it is they're asking you to do. Scenario A. Used to be a lecturer, so forgive me, I have to put in some little problem-based learning exercises, but to take some of the things that we spoke about and actually put them in a real kind of scenario or a potentially real scenario. A 60-year-old man is looking for a taxi to take him to a nearby tourist attraction. It is less than a quarter of a mile away. That's entirely possible, and I don't know what it's like for your perspective when someone wants to go on really short journeys. It might be something that you generally don't want to do, but of course you would. But that may happen quite a lot. So if someone's coming here for the first time, they're staying in the Radisson, they're going to the SEC, and they find out that there's a science centre that's right there, or the new distillery, things like that. There's so much to do in this very short space, but for someone who's got potential problems walking, that's going to take them forever to get there. They wouldn't even consider it. So you might have a lot of short hops going around places that you normally wouldn't expect, but that's because they just couldn't do the walk. So that's something that I think is highly plausible. That person begins to choke, possibly a worst case scenario again, but that would go on to use your judgment in terms of where to take them and to make sure that they're comfortable and safe as you would do with anyone. But my main point of putting that in there is in the same way that someone's speech might be indecipherable to you, to their partner who they're with, they'll understand them perfectly. And when you hear someone choking for the first time with MND, certainly for me anyway, I thought they were going to die. It was a horrible, raspy, nasal, gargling sound, really quite sinister. Sounded like the last sound that person was going to make. But it was fine. It was like, forget about it, it's fine. So the person with them will make that quite clear, that this isn't a big deal, it's a common occurrence that happens all the time, but when you first hear that, if you hear that, it can be real danger. There's something going on here, but it's actually not that big a deal. So something to just factor in when it comes to choking. I think you'll know if someone's in jeopardy, but it might not be as sinister as it actually sounds. Scenario B, and I've only got two, A and B. A 40-year-old man is meeting friends at Glasgow railway station. His phone has no charge left and so cannot call his friends to confirm which train station they are at. So in this case, Glasgow railway station, does that mean Central Station? Does that mean Queen Street Station? Does it mean somewhere else entirely? Could be SECC, I don't know. So in this case, for example, the Hydro's got charging points. So if you knew somewhere that was nearby that had charging points with their phone, that might be something to do. But again, to just try and understand where they're going, try and articulate things so that you actually do what they're asking you to do. I've got no doubt this kind of thing happens all the time and people come from other countries, but again, international delegation, speech impediments or speech difficulties, it could be particularly challenging to understand where people want to go. Relatedly, kind of second part if you like, his mobility is unaffected in this case, but his speech is impeded. You can just about make him out yelling what sounds like whiskey. So in this case, it might sound like that person is wanting a drink, or that they're drunk, that they want to go to a bar or something like that, but it could be that they've heard there's a distillery that's open in Glasgow and they want to go to the distillery. So the worst thing you could do there is take them to some whiskey bar or something. Make sure that you've understood what it is that they're asking. So whiskey, it might sound like they're slurring their speech perhaps, like the myth busting poster who showed you, you might think that they're drunk. Wouldn't be the case in this instance. So I guess understanding what they're asking for is the theme of the day again. I'm going to take a little pause, a little recap, and then what I'm going to do is show you a series of really, really short videos which are actually people with MND. There's just myself and Lynn here from HQ, but it would be great if there was someone with MND. The second best thing we can do is have their voices in the room so you can actually hear what someone sounds like with MND. So I'll do that in a wee minute. To emphasise, it is an international delegation, so people will want to see and do things in Scotland. If they go off the plane and then they come here and they find out about all these things that are going on. It'll be Christmas at that point, I guess, as well, lots of things going on. So what people can accomplish is relative to their abilities, if they can get around, but it's not it's within the realms of possibility. People will still want to see and do things, so that might involve a lot of these short journeys, etc. MND affects people in different ways, but everyone is aware of how their condition impacts on their interaction, so they will be aware, they will be happy to play ball and understand that it's taking a bit longer. They'll see that you're maybe getting frustrated if it takes that little bit longer. They might slow down and really emphasise certain words if it is speech that's affected, so people know what's going on. You don't need to talk to them as if they're silly. Patience is the name of the game, as is the name of the game for everything really. And again, I keep saying it, forgive me, but clarify what people are asking from you before you take any actions. 5 short little videos, and then I'll kind of wrap up a little bit and offer time for some questions. So this is the first of 5.
My mum's symptoms of MND started with her speech becoming a bit slurred. At work she was called into HR and the assumption was that she was drunk. Her line manager had gone there without talking to her first. That made my mum feel incredibly frustrated and incredibly angry that people were making assumptions and judgments that she was drunk before considering that there might be a medical reason. the result of that was that she never went back to work.
Second of 5.
I went to the bank and felt the bank official treated me differently because my speech was slow. He started speaking so loudly in short sentences as if I were stupid.
I went to the hairdresser. When I asked for an appointment, she didn't answer and just looked really embarrassed. She kind of just looked at me as if I was so mad. And in the end, I had to leave without an appointment. All she had to do was say, "Oh, sorry, I didn't understand." And I would have laughed and made a joke of it. We would have worked it out. That was all she had to do.
Because my daughter lost her speech, people assumed that she had something wrong with her brain, so they didn't talk to her, they would talk to me, above her. This made my daughter feel angry. She knew exactly what was going on. It's difficult for people to talk to someone who hasn't got speech, but don't forget, you can talk to someone with MND. They're still a person. The illness hasn't taken their personality away.
It must have taken us about a month to start telling people that MND. I think I'm the only one in the village who goes around in a wheelchair. Different reactions there. People look and see you and they'll walk away from you. And maybe crossing the street, maybe because they don't want anything to happen to themselves like that. I always call it crossing the bridge. And I think the bridge for most people is coming to speak to you. I'm sorry to hear what you've got. And I think that's what the hardest thing is.
Okay. The videos are from our website, so please go online and have a look and make sure you take these away. I'll take a pause now for at least 5 minutes, potentially 10 whole minutes if there's any questions. Some roving mics, so anything at all, please ask while we're here. Thanks very much.